Hello, I'm Randolph,
And I'm Monica.
and we're from the Houston SPC Wildlife Center of Texas. We're here at Discovery Green, and we would like to thank the Discovery Green Conservancy for inviting us to come and speak to you today about urban wildlife. We live in one of the largest metropolitan areas in the country. We're surrounded by cars, freeways, buildings, and people. We're also surrounded by beautiful parks, waterways, and undeveloped wildlands where we play, picnic, and relax. We share these areas with a vast array of wildlife, wild animals who live here year-round, and animals who are passing through as they migrate. Most of the time, we don't even think about these animals or how they help us. The animals that live here with us help make Texas a beautiful place. These animals help our green areas thrive and grow by pollinating and spreading seeds. These green areas are important because they help stop soil erosion, filter our streams and bayous, and transform carbon dioxide into oxygen that we need. Wild animals also help keep pest and insect populations under control. They provide valuable cleaning services by eating dying and dead plants and animals. In the process, they remove harmful bacteria, viruses, and diseases from our environment. And finally, they provide indicators of the overall health of our natural environment, alerting scientists to conditions that might pose threats to humans. These wild animals don't just live in our area, they're our neighbors. We at the Wildlife Center are fortunate to work with these animals day in, day out, and help them in return. The Wildlife Center of Texas is the largest wildlife rehabilitation facility in the country. We're a hospital, an orphanage, and a care facility for ill, injured, orphaned, and oiled wildlife, staffed by a team of veterinary professionals, permitted wildlife rehabilitators, and dedicated animal care volunteers. Each year we take in more than 10,000 wild animals. Animals that are familiar to you like ducks and doves, rabbits and squirrels, and maybe some that aren't quite so familiar to you. Bald eagles, bobcats, beavers, otters, loons, spoonbills. Over the last 10 years, we have helped more than 380 different species of reptiles, amphibians, birds, mammals, and invertebrates. Our goal is to help these animals return to their natural environments with the best possible chance of survival. Monica and I are here today to introduce you to some of our education ambassadors. These are animals that came to us as patients, and they are animals that cannot be released back out of the wild because their physical conditions make it unlikely that they would be able to survive. These guys are not pets. They are protected by federal and state laws, and we're required to have permits for each and every one of our ambassadors. They help us spread the message of peaceful coexistence. And with that, Monica, who is that intriguing guy on your arm?
So this intriguing guy over here is a Harris's hawk, and he is native to Texas, and we're going to talk about him, and we're going to tell you his story about how he got to us at the Wildlife Center of Texas. So when he was a young bird, very small, he fell out of his nest, and upon falling out of his nest, some great folks found him. The only issue is that they decided to keep him for a while, and not knowing that he had a broken bone in his body, his collarbone, the bone didn't heal the right way. So since the bone didn't heal the right way, he is unable to fly and became an education bird. And he was transferred to us over 7 years ago now, and we've had the delight of working with him and learning new things about Harris's hawks. So one of the things I can tell you about the Harris hawk is they are very unique hawks. Besides being daytime birds, they also hunt like wolves. And what you hear him doing right now, this is his voice. So he's not displeased or anything. He's just telling you about things in his life and things that he sees, and he's being really happy. But they do hunt like wolves, and so that means they are sort of a pack animal. They will help each other raise the young. So he would have gone back and helped to raise his brothers and sisters for the next year. They again hunt in packs for food. So they'll start by flushing birds out or animals out of the underbrush, the mesquite, things like that. And then they'll have other birds that come around and actually get the prey item. They will share them. They also nest together. And that means that in mesquite trees, scrub and things like that, you'll actually find many nests of Harris's hawks together. So one of the more interesting things that they do, and one of the more unique things to their species, is they'll do something called stacking. And they'll actually jump up on each other's backs so that they can get a better view, we think, of things around them, see predators coming, or be able to see prey better. A lot of the things that they eat would be lizards, snakes, small rodents such as mice or rats. They'll also take birds. They, again, are native to Texas. So that means that primarily right now, they are in a range from South Texas, Southeast Texas as well, around Sugar Land, Victoria, down towards South Texas, over to New Mexico, Arizona, and down into the actual country of Mexico. So they are making their way up this way, but they still do like those kind of open areas. So to see them here in Houston proper, we're not quite there yet. All right, so we're going to get Randolph take it away with our Eastern Screech Owl.
Yeah. Now this is a cute little guy. Looks like a baby owl, doesn't he? He's actually a full-grown adult. We estimate that he's somewhere between 6 and 9 years old. These guys are the smallest owls we have in the Houston area. They're also the most common owls we have in the Houston area. Size-wise, he's about 4 to 8 ounces. And they typically have lengths of about 6 to 8 inches from head to tail, and their wingspan is about 2 feet. But don't let that small size fool you. These guys are great hunters. They eat a wide variety of animals. They particularly like small mammals, mice, rats. They eat small birds, frogs, lizards, maybe snakes. But best of all, and what we really like about these guys, is they like to eat insects, especially those big brown cockroaches that we don't like here in Houston. They also eat June bugs as well as moths. They typically hunt by just perching in a tree and waiting for prey to pass underneath, and then they jump down and grab that prey. Now you'll notice his feathering. The colors are designed to allow him to blend into his surroundings. These guys like large trees, oak trees, evergreen trees. Because of their size, they're subject to predation from larger birds. So blending in, especially during the daytime, is very critical for their survival. They are, like I said, the most common type of owl we have in the Houston area. They are in the large trees around us. Most times people cannot see them when they go out at night. However, you can listen for them, and if you hear a little trill, then you may have screech owls in the area. The other types of owls that we actually have here are great horned owls, otherwise known as hoot owls. They look a little bit like screech owls, but they're very large, and they have big yellow eyes. We also have barred owls, and then the reclusive barn owls. They're the owls that have the heart-shaped faces. Now, worldwide, there are over 240 different species of owls. They live on all continents except Antarctica, and most of them are nocturnal, meaning they are active at night. They've developed certain adaptations to help them thrive in low-light conditions. They have tremendous eyesight. Their eyeballs and their head make up most of the space inside of their skulls, so that they can be very sensitive to light that we couldn't see. They also have tremendous hearing. The shape of their face, the design of their face and their beak and the feathers channels more sound over their ears. Their ears are also symmetrically located on their heads. What you see up here are just feather tufts. Those are not their ears. Their ears are not external. They're just flat against their head. But the asymmetrical ears are such that the right ear is a little bit higher than the left ear. It points up, and the left ear points down. What this allows is for them to hear sound not only to the left and to the right, but also above and below them. The final adaptation I want to talk about is silent flight. The feathers on their wings are designed to minimize turbulence and cut down on noise. The leading edge of the wing, the feathers are serrated so that they just slice through the air without impacting it. And then the trailing feathers are soft and they dampen the sound passing over. The result is a predator that can locate prey in the dark and strike silently. This guy came to us about 4 years ago. He was found on the side of the road, and we suspect that he collided with a car. That's not unusual for an owl because they're out late at night and they find prey and they focus on that prey in the road. Sometimes cars come upon them and collisions happen. But as a result of that, he suffered some damage in his left eye. He's only got partial vision in that left eye, and consequently, he's not able to be released. He needs to have full eyesight in both eyes. But he's as big as he's going to get and could live as long as a lifespan of 20 years in captivity. You ready for? Yes. So we have some audience out here, and there's a question, which is great. He's asking, how do we know that he only has partial vision? And that's really where our permitted wildlife rehabilitators come in. They have 30-plus years of experience working with these animals. And they run these animals through a battery of tests. They're not necessarily formal, but by moving your hand across their faces and seeing how they respond, especially when they come in, if they don't respond when the hand is very close to them, especially if they're not used to being around human beings, that means they're not sensitive to that. And so we've determined that he didn't have vision in that left eye. He's not going to be quite so sensitive now because he spent the last 4 years around us.
And
so,
also,
great question, yes.
And also to add to that, one of the things that is great with our partnership with the SPCA is that we're surrounded by amazing vets. So those amazing vets actually have ophthalmological training, and they can come in and they can actually do a full battery of eye tests on the animals too. So along with the volunteers and all the experience that we have, it also goes to help the vets too. All right, so one of the other interesting animals that we've brought to you today is going to be an albino red-eared slider. So I'm going to actually take this little guy out for you and hold him so that you can see him. I'm going to keep a good hold on him, though, because he is going to get around. Now, normally red-eared sliders are green, and they have that, of course, red right behind the ears. But this little guy is going to be a little different. So you're going to see that he's got that coloring, and that instead of having that red behind his eye, he's actually got the orange. So for him, there's not really anything that's wrong with him. Basically what's happening is that he was brought to us because someone was really worried about him being out in the wild and having this different coloration. And you can also see how small he is. So for animals that lack their normal coloring in the wild, they're actually going to be a food item really quickly. And what that means, and I'm going to put him in here so y'all can actually see him swim a little bit too. What that means for him is that becoming that food item very quickly, he's not really going to get to go on and, have a full life. So a great citizen brought him into us. We determined he's healthy. Just because he's not the correct color doesn't change anything. He's a healthy animal. So he'll have a special release in a special protected area, and he'll be able to live his life to the fullest and enjoy that. So very special animal that we have here today. Yes. You know what? He's going to be the normal size of other red-eared sliders when he gets to be older. So that may be a diameter of, 6, 8, 10 inches wide. It'll be just like the ones you see in ponds. So great question. Thanks. And now we are going to go ahead and go into one of North America's only marsupials, actually the only marsupial. So this is our education possum that Randolph has with us here. This sweet little guy is really, really special to us because as a baby, he came in with a broken jaw. And unfortunately, again, he was one of those cases where someone thought that they were going to be able to take care of him, and his jaw was broken. So they didn't know that what they were doing was actually harming him. They brought him to us then when he was a few months old, and we determined that we weren't going to be able to fix that jaw. So he had a great personality because he'd been around people, and he was able to gain status as an education ambassador with us. So, as you can see again, his mouth, that jaw is broken. We do have a special diet for him, special type of food. And then we're going to talk more about him being the only marsupial and just what makes possums great and what makes them so awesome. I know a lot of people go, ugh, possum. No, not really. They are amazing. So, Randolph, do you have any facts that you want to share about them?
Oh, yeah. So let's start off with one that is specific to the Wildlife Center of Texas. This is the animal we take in the most of every year.
Yes. And when we say most, we're talking hundreds.
Thousands. We took in 2,700
Thousands this year.
opossums last year. So in the springtime, our large facility, most of the kennels, most of the aquariums are filled up with these guys for a good month, and they come in. But really the reasons we love opossums, the facts that we have 2,700 of them each year, that they're North America's only marsupial are great. But what really wows me is the fact that these guys are so beneficial for our environment.
Oh, they're amazing.
These guys are the custodial crew of the wild. They do a lot of cleanup services. They go and take care of all sorts of things that we don't want in the environment. Now, they'll eat trash, but they also eat things that aren't trash that we don't want. They love
Ticks.
rats and mice. They love ticks. These guys are known to, in a given year, eat 5,000 ticks. Now, I'm not sure how they counted that, but there are several studies out there that these guys eat thousands of ticks. They eat fleas. They eat cockroaches.
Grubs out of your yard.
Grubs. So they take care of the cleanup. And yet, for all of that stuff that they do that's so nasty, these guys are very clean. They're fastidious in their cleanliness.
They're super clean. They can also eat snakes. And I recently actually saw a video of one eating a snake, and I'd heard about it, but it was really surprising. But the reason that they can do that is actually because they have such a slow metabolism. And that metabolism means that that venom basically just kind of turns into nothing in their bodies. So if a snake bites them, it's so much different than a snake biting a house cat. Snake bites the cat's in trouble. Snake bites him, no big deal. He's got a dinner or a lunch. So that's one of the great things too, and people get really worried about them having rabies. That's one of the most common questions we get. Well, they don't, because their body temperature is so low, and again, that slow metabolism. They're considered to be a dead-end host.
Yep. So that goes for rabies and distemper.
Yes.
So yes,
All those things.
They're very passive animals. They're not aggressive. There's a reason why people talk about playing opossum, because when these guys are threatened under most conditions, they will just collapse into a coma. It's not something that they can control. They actually just will collapse into that. They'll ooze some fluids out of their mouth that is really unpleasant smelling, and predators will typically go away from them. And then after some period of time, these guys will bounce back up and disappear. So they are very non-aggressive. Now, that does change when they have babies. And I'll let Monica talk about the babies in a moment. But if they're protecting their young, then they will possibly be a little bit more aggressive. But in the unlikely event that somebody is bit, you need to clean it out so it doesn't get infected. But you don't have to worry about those things like rabies or distemper. Now, what about those babies?
So Mama actually has a pouch. Again, like we said, she is the only marsupial in North America. And the cool thing is she can have 12 to 15 babies. So she has the babies giving birth, and they're actually the size of a jelly bean. So they can fit 4 to a teaspoon to kind of give you an idea. And they'll crawl up Mama. They'll crawl into her pouch. And each baby finds a nipple. and then they'll grow there. Eyes are closed and actually covered over because they're born mostly developed. And as they continue to keep latched onto that nipple and get the milk and the nutrients, they'll actually start to develop. Their eyes will open at about 4 to 6 weeks. And then once they are about this big and they actually have some hair to their bodies so that they can keep themselves a little warm, they'll start crawling out. They'll get onto mama's back, onto her side, and they'll kind of start exploring around on her first. And then once they start getting bigger, that's when they start exploring the general area around her and riding on her back and things. And so by nature's design, one of the things that happens when mama's ready for them to leave the nest, so to speak, is that they will actually fall off of mama's back in different places. And that's so that mama doesn't leave her whole family of 12 babies in your yard and that they're all trying to find food in your yard. So the possums really are one of our most amazing animals that we have around. They're so plentiful. Their lifespan is a little bit shorter than you would think, only about 4 to 6 years maximum, and that's really a maximum in pushing it. We usually about 4 to 5. So we love them. They do great things, and the tail, by the way, is prehensile. Yes, it can curve around, but they do not hang upside down from that tail. It helps to balance them, and it helps them to maneuver easier when they are climbing things.
All right, so we will close out the ambassador introductions with my favorite ambassador, our northern crested caracara. He's my favorite because he's actually spent his entire life at the Wildlife Center of Texas. He came to us as an egg just over 6 years ago, and we put the egg in our incubator. It hatched. We were able to raise him up. In a lot of cases, we've been able to raise birds up from egg and get them back out into the wild. But in his case, he has deformities in his toes that he was hatched with, birth defects. And you can sort of see how these toes just don't look quite right. And so the toes and the talons for a raptor are the tools of the trade. They have to be able to grab, seize, slice, tear in order to feed themselves as well as defend themselves. And in his case, while his toes are good enough for standing and perching and holding basic things, they're not good enough to do those other things that I just mentioned. So he's not a good candidate for release because he would not be able to survive in the wild. As I mentioned, he came to us as an egg. His nest was up in a transmission line and was causing problems for the local power company. CenterPoint Energy reached out to U.S. Fish and Wildlife and received permission to relocate the nest. These birds are protected by law, and by extension, their active nests are also protected by law, and it's illegal to relocate nests from trees, buildings, power lines without authorization from U.S. Fish and Wildlife. But CenterPoint Energy got that, brought the nest into us, and there was his egg in there. Now, crested caracaras have that huge beak, and a lot of people think that they're eagles. They're commonly referred to in Texas as Mexican eagles, but they really are a type of falcon. So their closest relatives are birds like peregrines, kestrels, merlins, Applemato falcons. And like those falcons, these guys can hunt from the air, but they tend to prefer being closer to the ground. They are very fast runners. You can see those long legs, and they will chase prey down by running after it. They'll also dig in the ground and pull things out. They will go after just about anything that moves and interests them. They love small mammals, rats, mice, voles, moles, birds, reptiles, snakes, frogs, lizards, invertebrates, large insects. They'll go after it. They'll do all of that. But in addition to hunting, they do a lot of scavenging. These guys are frequently seen in the company of vultures. They'll hang out with the vultures until the vultures find something of interest, at which point these guys will step in and take over, take the prey, and eat it while the vultures watch. They're not passive animals. They're very aggressive. When hunting and scavenging don't work, then they will go and harass other birds and steal their food from them. So They are very opportunistic and do a great job feeding themselves. We're lucky that we're in Texas because this is one of the few places in this country that northern crested caracaras reside. They're here in Texas, Arizona, and Florida. They prefer warmer climates, so a lot of their range is down in Mexico, Central America, and South America. And so that's really what we've got for the ambassadors. So we typically close out these sessions with questions and answers, but because we're not dealing with a large audience, we don't have a lot of question and answers. If you've got questions, we'll try and repeat that. But people typically will ask, what can they do to help wildlife in the area? And that's a very big question because there's lots of things that people can do. It starts with just some basic stuff around the house if they want to try to keep wild animals from becoming nuisances in their neighborhood. They can do basic house maintenance so that animals don't try and make homes in their walls, attics, underneath their decks. They can remove food and cover trash cans with bungee cords so that it's not a banquet table for wild animals. Everybody loves wild animals until they become a nuisance. And easy food and warm nesting areas are ways that wild animals do become nuisances. But beyond that, what to do when you find a wild animal. We have lots of resources on our website, wildlifecenterofTexas.org. We typically encourage people, if they find an animal that's in distress and injured or unable to take care of itself, to get it to a permitted wildlife rehabilitator as soon as possible. As Monica mentioned with the Harris's hawk, even the best intentioned people can sometimes do things that hurt the animal's chances of getting back out into the wild.
It's because, you know, we have capabilities, and we're very lucky to have those capabilities by being partnered with the SPCA, that we can do x-rays and ophthalmologic exams and things like that that really help the animals out. And just as a regular citizen, I mean, I even know before I started volunteering with the Wildlife Center, it was never things that I could have ever understood as an injury to an animal. So by bringing them into us, you're saving a life. And you're making sure that, you know, generations ahead can actually get to see these animals out in the wild. And so I think that's what we're all about, is conservation and helping these animals and getting them back out into the wild. But if you do happen to find a little lovely one that needs some help, there's some things that you can do. So make sure that if you are a kid, that you have an adult with you. Great thing to do. Birds, baby squirrels, small animals, you can get a shoebox or an appropriately sized box. Put down a hand towel, washcloth, or paper towels on the bottom, and go ahead and take and put that animal in. Cover the box up to make sure the little one doesn't get out, because it does happen. And then if it is cold outside, you can always make a rice sock or a bean sock. Take the sock and using uncooked rice or beans, fill it up, tie it, put it in your microwave for about 60 seconds. And then that sock goes on one end of the box and your little baby goes on the other. And always, please feel free to call. You know, we love to give advice, and we love to hear from the people who are going to bring the animals or who just have questions. We're always here to help. That's our main goal.
And our telephone number is 713-861-9453. We're also online, like I said, wildlifecenterofTexas.org. And one last thing, if you have the time and the inclination, we are a volunteer-based organization. We're always welcoming new volunteers in, giving them an opportunity to get a closer look and experience with these animals while they're helping them. Both Monica and myself are volunteers, and so we have been doing this for quite some time.
Yep, we love it. It's our passion. So if you'd ever like to join us, look us up on the website, and we have a How to Get Involved tab, and you can actually do that. And if you decide that you'd like to help us out, donations and things, you can do that too. So
we take donations of goods. If you're interested in donating money, we can do that as well. It's all on our website. So thank you very much. We appreciate that you were watching the video today, and we look forward to hearing from you sometime in the future. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Your well-being is important to all of us here at Discovery Green. We're relying on each other to stay healthy and strong. but we still need to share cultural experiences. The park and its online programming can help connect you with artists and musicians to help relieve the stress of these times while practicing safe distancing. If you can, please donate $30 to support this source of health and happiness for our community. You can give by text to Rediscover to 41444 or log on to discoverygreen.com/donate. Thank you.